Out of the 3 Green Party ministers, I doubt anyone would have guessed it would be party leader Eamon Ryan to resign first. And yet here we are, another coalition party leader gone. Can we complete the trifecta with Micheál Martin before time is called on this government? I have my doubts, but only time will tell. Much like with the resignation of Leo Varadkar from Fine Gael, Eamon Ryan's resignation was not expected and came after defeats at the polls. While their coalition colleagues also lost seats in the local elections, the Green Party lost roughly half their seats and lost both of their MEPs. A bit of a disaster any way you slice it. And so Eamon Ryan announced his resignation on June 18th. In contrast to Leo Varadkar's resignation, Ryan announced he will not contest the next general election, although a similar announcement from Leo looks to be on the cards after news broke that People Before Profit's Paul Murphy was successful in his High Court challenge regarding SIPO's decision to refuse to investigate the leak of a confidential document to a GP friend. Just a coincidence, I'm sure, but isn't it just wonderful that politicians can avoid any semblance of accountability by simply taking their ball and going home? If only it were that easy for the rest of us. Another difference to both leaders' resignations was the optics. When Leo resigned, he had his team on the steps behind him in a show of solidarity, with suitably sombre facial expressions to convey the gravity of their leader departing. And yet with Eamon, not so much. In fact, quite the opposite. No, instead of solidarity in what can only be described as both comical and a bit sad, his party colleagues watched on stealthily from a nearby south-facing window with no salads in sight. It just looked ridiculous, especially as Eamon Ryan got to the part in his speech about how he wanted to thank all my family and friends who have been at my side at all times. I mean, their absence and odd window watching speaks volumes. Eamon Ryan will continue on in his ministerial role until such time as his new party leader decides otherwise. And so we come to the issue of his successor. Well, in the immediate aftermath of his resignation, we were left with 2 equally unpalatable options, weren't we? On the one hand, we had Deputy Leader Katherine Martin, the minister who has overseen the payment scandal in RTE, while appearing completely out of her depth on the issue, and who doesn't understand the Constitution and who will double down on ignorance instead of being a grown-up and admitting she was wrong. On the other hand, we have Roderic Gorman, the other Green minister who doesn't understand the Attorney General, or more accurately, just blatantly lied to the public about the Attorney General's advice, and who deleted files relating to children in state care for GDPR reasons, and whose actions in the handling of the mother and baby home scandal and redress scheme should have seen his resignation multiple times over, in my opinion. And that's to say nothing about the continuing numbers of missing children from state care under his watch. A fairly shite choice, right? Well, it was until shortly after Eamon Ryan's resignation, when Katherine Martin took to Instagram to announce her resignation as deputy leader and rule herself out of the leadership race with zero explanation as to why. Avoiding a poison chalice, perhaps? Well, it's certainly not putting Roderic off, as he has since announced his intention to run for party leader. It would appear that his competition will come from Senator Pippa Hackett. Both have now received the necessary number of nominations. It would appear that Senator Hackett's popularity stems from the fact that she is an Offaly based farmer, which Green Party members hope will stop the accusations of the Green Party being Dublin-centric and anti-rural. Yeah, good luck with that one. Either way, I can't see it mattering much who gets a run at the leadership. I personally can't see anything other than a Green wipeout at the general election. As for the ordinary people of this country, the Greens have done nothing but tax the ever-living shit out of us for simply trying to live. And that brings us on nicely to Eamon Ryan's legacy. Much has been made in the media since his resignation of how he brought the Greens back from the brink and built them back up after their annihilation at the hands of the electorate in the wake of the great financial crash. And yes, that is true, he led them back into government after all, but I think it's also good to remember that at the time of the last general election, there was a green wave across Europe which our own Green Party duly benefited from. I'd wager a lot of the people who voted for the Greens here in Ireland did so as climate change was all over the news, and a vote for the Greens was a simple way of doing something to help the environment. Little did we know just how much power the Greens would end up with and what exactly they would do with that power. But oh oh boy did we find out. The Greens have effectively been the tail wagging the dog, the smallest party in the coalition by some margin, and yet they must be listened to and entertained by their coalition colleagues, as they could easily pull the plug. Well, in theory anyway. In practice, they've made it clear their ideologies can be changed and bought to keep the gravy train rolling, as evidenced by the votes to end the eviction ban, and for the absolutely disgraceful mother and baby home redress scheme. It is clear they sold their morals long ago in pursuit of their myopic climate agenda, and their unwavering view that they and they alone can speak on climate issues is just another reason why the public are rejecting them. Eamon Ryan spoke in his resignation speech about how the Greens' approach is to start by listening to people, asking for help, rather than telling everyone what to do. Yet it feels like all they've done is tell people what to do, and the people are sick of it. Eamon Ryan himself told us all to take shorter showers and less car journeys to bring down our energy costs. He told us we wouldn't have cheap holidays anymore. He told us cycling will be the most common way to travel, while telling us he was determined to take cars off the roads. He even told us to grow salads on south-facing windowsills for sake. Under his direction, we the people have been lumbered with carbon taxes for simply living. The hypocrisy of the Greens and Eamon Ryan himself has caused even those concerned about climate change to revolt against the Green agenda. Much like the Just Stop Oil gobshites lost the room a long time ago with their antics, the Greens have turned potential voters away due to their double standards, hypocrisy and endless taxes. When Eamon Ryan is lecturing us about our carbon footprint while jetting off to the likes of China and Brazil, two of the biggest polluters and threats to the natural world, he loses all credibility. His carbon footprint from all his trips since being a minister, I'd wager would easily outstrip the carbon footprint of my family since he got into power. I would argue that the Green Party are not just a Dublin-centric anti-rural party, but they are also an anti-poor party living in a wealthy bubble where they think that everyone can afford the hardships they are putting on people just because they can afford it. They can't see that not everyone can upgrade their homes to be more energy efficient, that not everyone can ditch the car, that not everyone can upgrade their car to an electric vehicle. If they were serious about retrofitting, for example, they would have rolled out a nationwide retrofit of social housing right off the bat. 8.6 billion in surplus, by the way. They would have worked to reduce any upfront costs so that more people, and not just the wealthy who could afford it, could avail of the grants. But no, that's not the Green way. Eamon Ryan spoke of how the Greens had been the subject of a relentless attack, particularly on social media, over their policies. Now, I've spoken about this before, but we are in the digital age now, and as a result, public representatives are more accessible than ever to the ordinary voter, and politicians will have to adapt and understand that, firstly, when you as a public representative use social media to get your message across, that it is a public forum where people can now easily respond to you, and second, that when you introduce policies that affect people, particularly their wallets, then you should expect a backlash. There will always be a small cohort who go too far and say vile things, but the majority will simply be the angry voters you have affected venting their frustrations. Your policies should be able to stand up to criticism, even angry criticism, from the electorate. You can't just dismiss it all as people being a bit mean. Not listening to the electorate is the very reason the Greens are on course to be given the boot at the next election. One last thing I want to touch on from his resignation speech is how he cites his son with special needs as a reason for his stepping away from politics. Now, that is completely understandable, but what I don't understand, much like with Simon Harris, is how a politician can have a family member with additional needs and not fight every single day in the Dáil to give greater protections to families in a similar position. The Green Party under Eamon Ryan hold the position of Minister for Children, and yet children with disabilities and additional needs are suffering worse than ever. Surely Eamon Ryan's own personal experience of this would have him directing his party to fight for better services for those in need. Instead, he and his party tried to fob carers off with a nonsense referendum that would deliver the grand sum of fuck all to them, and forged a ahead with a deposit return scheme that gave absolutely no consideration to people with disabilities and how it might affect them. The sheer fact that not a single reverse vending machine is wheelchair accessible is proof of that. No plan in place to ensure retailers take back the empties in the delivery van for those who rely on home deliveries for their shopping. Nope, not a single given. I suppose when you are insulated with a TD's salary, you forget that others aren't so well off. The legacy of this incarnation of the Greens and the legacy of the man who led them will be of a party who managed achieving a lot of what they set out to do, but that ultimately enforced undue hardship on the people of Ireland in their narrow-minded view of what climate action should look like. The last time they were destroyed at the ballots, it was as the Fianna Fáil mudguard, and as the party that could have pulled the plug much earlier, but didn't. They took more of the heat than Fianna Fáil did at the time, perhaps somewhat unfairly given what Fianna Fáil did, but this time around, nah, they aren't the junior coalition party mudguard. They aren't unduly bearing blame that should be shared around equally. They will absolutely be judged on what they have delivered for people, and that is more and more taxes and hardships. Eamon Ryan brought them back from the brink once, but I sincerely doubt he could do it again. The writing is on the wall for the Greens, and quite frankly, I think Eamon Ryan can see it. So too can Katherine Martin. It's hard not to look at the resignation of both leader and deputy leader in the space of a day as anything other than the pair of them abandoning ship as the climate change defiant iceberg approaches. So what do you think? What will Eamon Ryan's legacy be? Will the Greens survive the next general election? Who do you think will get the nod to lead them through it? And does it even matter? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified of new content. If you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee or a super thanks, which is greatly appreciated, and a huge thank you to those of you that already have. You can also follow me on Twitter. Until next time, slán go fóill.